one power, invisible, and just see it everywhere and every day. One power, indescribable, and just speak of it with every word you say. Mysterious until you know the truth, as simple as the love inside of you. Call it God, call it Spirit, call it Jesus, call it Lord, call it Buddha, Baha'u'llah, angels' wings or heaven's door. But whatever name you give it, it's all one power, can't you see? It's the power of the love in you and me. One power, one power.
Good morning and welcome to the Center for Spiritual Living, Midtown, Atlanta, where you are welcome. Such is the nature of life that all it asks and all it wants is the opportunity to appear. And you are that opportunity, and so am I, and so it is. Whoever you are, whatever path brought you here today, please know that you are welcome. We know who you are. You are an individualized expression of the divine in which we all live. We are life's opportunity to be someone unique and individual and wonderful. Whatever your ethnic background, your religious affiliation, however you know yourself or describe yourself, you are welcome to be part of this community in whatever way serves you. And our vision is we are a strong, open, globally connected community centered on the clarity of principle through teaching, service, and practice. We create a safe environment and a respectful environment that supports healthy spiritual growth. And now, our Declaration of Principles as written by our founder, Ernest Holmes.
A few of the Declaration of Principles we live by.
I believe in one God, one absolute power, and first cause to all things.
I believe that this power is perfect love, and it creates out of a desire to express love.
I believe all thought is creative, and how I choose to think creates my personal experience.
I believe in the unity of all life, and the immortality of the individual soul forever unfolding.
I believe in the eternal goodness, the eternal loving kindness, and the eternal givingness of God to all.
And so it is.
So grateful, hey,
So a practitioner is someone who's demonstrated the ability to use spiritual practice and spiritual laws to bring about great changes in their own lives. And they've demonstrated they know how to bring these about in other lives as well. They're licensed by the Centers for Spiritual Living and are available to help you with whatever is going on in your life, big or small. You can reach our practitioners on our website, cslmidtown.org, and we have a guest practitioner with us this morning, Becky Fox. Becky is an artist, a graphic designer, facilitator, teacher, and spiritual coach who specializes in empowering others to create what's fulfilling and meaningful. Becky is a licensed practitioner emeritus with Centers for Spiritual Living, trained in assisting others in making changes in their life by making changes in their thinking. Whether in one-on-one session or in a class, Becky provides safe and comfortable space where each person is encouraged to step through fears, move into the life they've always dreamed of having. Becky also uses her creative and artistic background in classes that use arts to heal and transform lives. Welcome, Becky.
Thank you. It's great to be here again. So I just invite each one of us to turn within to that sacred space of the Most High. And let's just take a deep breath in, releasing it. And this is just a reminder, knowing that this wonderful infinite presence, the Spirit, is breathing itself through each one of us so easily, so effortlessly. And so as we enter the sacred space, we turn within to this infinite presence that knows us beyond our stories that we have told ourselves. There is a life, a light, a truth greater than any of our limitations of the past. And it lives in each one of us here right now. Each of us is one with this greater whole. And so in this realization of oneness, we release these stories that no longer serve us and open our hearts to this divine presence in this present moment. Spirit is always creating itself through us, as us, and for us. We remember that we are not our fears, our failures, our history. We are the unfolding expression of this divine intelligence and love. And as we open up our hearts this morning to listen to Dr. Ron's message, he reminds us of this truth. In this spiritual community, we affirm a greater truth, that we are whole, we are worthy, we are free to be true, who we truly are. And so with gratitude, we say yes to transformation. We say yes to truth. And we say yes to this divine presence. We release this to the universe, knowing that it is already done. And so it is.
When everything changes, I can change anything. Turning the pages, everything's new. If life's little stages are teaching me anything, it's everything changes, and I can change too. Used to be when things got crazy, I'd get to feeling low. But I found out I can't let that faze me. Honey, now I know. When everything changes, I can change anything. Turning the pages, everything's new. If life's little stages are teaching me anything, it's everything changes, and I can change too. Who expects the unexpected? Life sneaking up on you. And sometimes we all feel disconnected. What you gonna do? When everything changes, I can change anything. Turning the pages and everything's new. If life's little stages are teaching me anything, it's everything changes, and I can change too. Change anything, turning the pages, everything's new. If life's little stages are teaching me anything, it's everything changes, and I can change. Everything changes, I can change anything. Turning the pages, everything's new. If life's little stages are teaching me anything, it's everything everything changes, and I can change too. Everything changes, and I can change too. Everything changes, and I can change too.
All right. It's my pleasure to introduce our speaker this morning. Reverend Dr. Ron Fox has been with us before, and we're welcoming him back this morning. Ron Fox has been a motivational speaker, workshop facilitator for over 25 years. He's had a long and successful career as a human resources executive, working for such companies as General Foods, GlaxoSmithKline, Unum, and Mattel Toys. Ron also operated a very successful search firm in Southern California. Ron's also an ordained minister with the Centers for Spiritual Living. He's a gifted speaker and published author. His inspirational style, coupled with a keen sense of humor, make him a favorite with audiences everywhere he has spoken. In 2018, the Centers for Spiritual Living honored him by designating him with a Doctor of Divinity, and in 2019, he was awarded the Meritorious Minister Award for Outstanding Service. He resides in Port St. John, Florida, with his wife, Becky, who you heard before. And welcome, Ron Fox.
Thank you. It's really, really wonderful to be back here. Becky and I always enjoy coming to speak to you and spending time after the message. So I invite all of you that are here to come on and be part of the discussion. So my title today is Moving Beyond Our Stories. And I want to begin with a quote that's attributed to the Buddha. He said, "Who is your enemy? Mind is your enemy. Who is your friend? Mind is your friend." He said, "Learn the way of the mind, tend to the mind with care." And I really like that quote, first of all, because I think it's true. And second of all, I think that's something Ernest Holmes would say, might not use the same words, but how we tend to our mind, the thoughts that we allow ourselves to put in our mind really determines the kind of life that we're going to live, the kind of story that we're going to tell about it. And I hope to kind of keep going with this thought and this frame throughout the rest of the message. So I want to give you an example that in some ways is humorous. And it's about Jack Kornfield, who now is a Buddhist teacher and also a psychologist. But Kornfield tells a story about when he entered the monastery, and he had been meditating for 2 years before he entered. But now he finds himself meditating for hours at a time in a small hut in the forest in Asia. And one day he notices that he has patches of skin that are numb. And he says to himself, "Numbness on your skin. I remember when I worked in the Peace Corps. That's a sign of leprosy. I might have leprosy." And his mind races. It takes off. He says, "What will I do? Did they throw people out of this monastery if they're lepers?" And his fears grew, and he sees himself, his life as a leper. He's an outcast. He's a beggar. He has to write home to his mother, "Mom, your son's a leper. I can never come home again." And so he finally decides to go see the head monk, who says, "No, you don't have leprosy, Jack. It's when you meditate for as long as we do here, your bodily perceptions change, and in meditations, so just noticed it with mindfulness." And I said before, it's a little humorous because at the end of it, Cornfield says, for 3 days, I lived my life as a leper. What will my mind make up next? And the truth of that is, what any of our minds will make up next is what we let it make up. So let me read to you the 10th principle of Buddhist psychology. Here it is. It's a quote. Thoughts are often one-sided and untrue. Learn to be mindful of thought instead of being lost in it. And what I hear when I read that quote is they're telling us to be the observer rather than get caught up in the middle of it. So when I think of the observer, I think of myself coming out, being up here and looking down at the thoughts that I'm thinking and looking at them without judgment really, but just observing. And when you do that, if the thoughts that you're allowing yourself to think are leading you to a life that you don't want, you can ask yourself, what have I been thinking that got me here? And how do I need to change my thoughts to have the life that I want to live? How can I tell the story I want to tell? So Wayne Dyer has a list of common excuses or stories that we tell ourselves. And here he had a long list. I'm just going to give you 6 of them. And so he says, it will be difficult. It will be risky. It will take time. There will be family drama. I'm too old. I'm not smart enough. So when I look at that list, some of them may be true. It may take time. It may be risky. There may be family drama, and it could be difficult. But what we need to ask ourselves, isn't it worth it to have a different story? Isn't it worth it to live our dream? Should those be reasons to stop us from living our dream? Because they come from the outside. Are we going to let other people, if there's going to be family drama, tell us to live their life rather than our life? Are we going to be willing to step outside our comfort zone and live the story that we so want to live? A lady named Patricia McAdoo said, we can get trapped with this story version of our life. Things like, I'll never amount to anything. I'm a failure at everything. I'm worthless. I don't deserve to be happy. Oh God, don't those sound horrible? And she said, what happens when we get stuck in our story, it's how we judge everything. And we look for evidence that supports how terrible we are. What we need to do is look from a new perspective. And so she gives an example of a book called The Shark and the Albatross. And what it is a film crew decides to look at the flight of the albatross. And how they do it, they have 2 camera crews. One of them is suspended on a cage just above the sea, the ocean, and they're going to film the albatross. The other group is a group of divers that are under the water with the sharks. And so here's what happens. The albatross lands on the water, the shark springs, and the albatross gets away. And later, when they talk about this amongst themselves, the first group in the cage empathizes with the albatross. The divers are in awe at the shark. And the moral of it is that their perspectives were influenced by their perspectives of how they filmed the event. And the writer Anais Nin wrote, "We don't see things as they are. We see things as we are." Think about that. We don't see things as they are. We see things as we are. And so in the example I just gave you, the people that saw the albatross, they sympathized with the bird. The people that dove and were in the water with the sharks and saw how they were in awe of the sharks. That was their perspective. So a psychiatrist named Daniel Amen came up with the concept of ants, automatic negative thoughts. They're thoughts that are so ingrained in our mind, we don't even realize that we have them. And what we need to do to get rid of them, we need to realize it. We need then to be able to overcome them. So we need to bring them to our consciousness by using the tools that we teach. You know, we teach enough tools in Science of Mind to help people do that. And let me give you an example of an automatic negative thought from my own life. So years ago, when I was the senior minister at the Auburn Church, Auburn, California, I was facilitating a group of about 10 or 12 people on self-image, okay? And we were all sitting at a long rectangular table. And I was sitting across from the president of the board, who was a friend. And at some point, remember now, self-image we're talking about. At some point, I dropped my pen on the floor. So picture this now. I'm bending down to pick up my pen, and under my breath, I whisper, "Klutz." When I come back up, my board president, again, who we were friends, looks at me and says, "Did you hear what you just said? You're facilitating a group on self-image and you called yourself a klutz?" I had no idea I did that. It was so ingrained in here that I was a klutz. That's how I thought of myself. And she brought it to my attention, and we laughed. And about 4 or 5 years ago, I don't remember exactly how long, Becky and I went back to Auburn to visit friends, and I gave a talk at one of the centers, and my former board president came. And after, we were talking and reminiscing, and I said, "Do you remember that?" And I didn't even get to finish. She said, "Yeah, when you called yourself a klutz, I remember that." So I don't do that anymore. So a lady named Emily Smith writes about this, and she said, you know, we have to start noticing our stories, not just what the stories are, but how they affect our happiness. And she gives an example of a young man who played football, got tackled, and was paralyzed. His immediate thoughts were, "My life was great, now it's over." A few months go by, and his thoughts changed. He said, "In my old life, I used to party a lot. I didn't think about other people. I was totally self-centered. I can be a better man than that." So he went to college. He got a degree in counseling, and now he teaches kids in high school. You know, here's the deal. Since we are the authors of our story, we can change how we tell them. Somebody used the term, we can make narrative choices. Narrative choices. So what does that mean? It means we can edit our story, we can reinterpret our story, and we can retell our story. So I actually hadn't planned on speaking about this, but I'm going to give you another example from my life. Becky and I, this week, watched 2 programs on HBO, the Billy Joel story. They were each 2.5 hours long. And last night, we watched the second and final episode. And you know, he's famous. He said at one point, $500 million, not bad. And he had regrets. He was married to one of the most beautiful women in the world, Christy Brinkley, and he blew the marriage. And so after it was over, Becky and I sat here and we talked, and mostly I talked, to be honest, because I looked back and I said, you know, Beck, regrets aren't really helpful in life, are they? Because it's looking back. And I used to do that a lot. And it doesn't help unless you want to look back at it from a different perspective. And I can look back. I had a really tough, not great childhood. And I'm, you know, when I look back, I can still be sad about it. But I can also say I learned from that. I had pain and hurt. And I could have turned out to be a really angry SOB. Or I could have turned out to be a loving, caring, compassionate person. That's who I turned out to be. That's the story I want to tell, and that's the story that I do tell. Let me give you a couple of quick quotes from Ernest Holmes, who said, "We will always attract to us in our lives and conditions according to our thought. The student should," and this is the second quote, "the student should take time every day to see his life as he wishes it to be, to make a mental picture of his ideal." Let me give you one more example, which I found really amazing. Psychologists did a study of 52 couples, and they asked them to tell the story of how they met. Okay, 52 couples, tell us how you met. After interviewing all 52 couples, these psychologists were able to predict with 94% accuracy which couples would have a stable marriage and which couples would be divorced after 3 years. And here's what the difference was. The ones with more positive stories had stable marriages and relationships. The one with negative stories, most of them were divorced within 3 years. Think about that. So Becky and I have been in Science of Mind since 1990. So that's a few years. So I could never come on and say, this is the best example I've ever seen or the best story I've ever seen. But I want to give you an example now of how one thought repeated over and over again can affect somebody's life. And again, I read this in a book that Jack Kornfield wrote. I told you before, he's a Buddhist scholar and he's a psychologist. And this story is about a woman named Paula who went to see him. Listen. So Paula comes and she's very upset because her husband had just left her and her 6-year-old son. She was in grief, she was in anger, and she was in fear. She had a voice in her head that told her she was unlovable and she would always be abandoned. She felt that that was the story of her life, because when she was 3 years old, her father walked out on her mother and her, and not only walked out, but he walked out of her life. And a few years later, he died, so she never saw him again. And she believed he left because it was her fault, that she was flawed and unlovable. So after several weeks of working with her, Cornfield asked her to go back to that night and remember the story of when her father left. So here it is. She was 3 years old. She was standing at the top of the stairs, watching her parents fight like they did again and again and again. And so finally, her dad picks up his suitcase and walks out the door without ever looking back at Paula. And Cornfield says to her, "What was it like?" And she said, "It was agonizing. He didn't even look up at me." And he said to her, "What were you thinking?" And she said, "I did something wrong. There's something wrong with me. Otherwise, he would have stayed." So then he asks her to enter into the experience of her dad that night. And he says to her, "What does your body feel like when you go back into being him?" And she says, "Tight, rigid. I feel like I'm going to explode. I'm terrified. I'm in a marriage I never wanted. I'm in a dead-end job. If I don't get out of here, I'm going to lose my life. I have to escape." And Cornfield says to him, "And now, as you pick up your suitcase, do you know your daughter is standing at the top of the stairs?" "Yes, but I love her so. I can't look back, because if I see the look on her face, I won't be able to leave, and I have to get out of here. I love her so much, but if I don't leave, I'm going to die." And Cornfield then says to Paula, "So who made up the story that you are unlovable?" And she says, "I did." And he says, "Is it true?" And she says, "No." And he says, "Are you sure?" And she laughs because she feels free. This, to me, is such a great example. She had the thought she was unlovable. She would always be abandoned. And that's the story that played out in her life in every single relationship she had with every man. One thought or two thoughts. Not lovable, will be abandoned. Now she's free. She's free to live a different life. I want to end with something from Donna Markova titled, I Will Not Die, an Unfulfilled Life, an Unlived Life. And she wrote this the night her dad died because he was convinced he didn't matter. I will not die an unlived life. I will not live in fear of falling or catching fire. I choose to inhabit my days, to allow my living to open me, to make me less afraid, more accessible, to loosen my heart until it becomes a wing, a torch, a promise. I choose to risk my significance, to live so that that which came to me as seed goes to the next as blossom, and that which came to me as blossom goes on as fruit. God bless you. I'll see you in a few minutes to have our discussion. Bye now.
Thanks, Reverend Ron. What an awesome message this morning. We can change our story and change our lives. So that's what we teach, and we're glad that you brought that message to us this morning. So I'm going to go into our New Minister Sacred Covenant Easy Prayer, which you can download from our website, cslmidtown.org. Scroll down a little bit, and there's a link to download it. So if you would, say this with me. There is only one life. This life is good. This life is God. This life is my life now. And knowing that I am one with this life that is God, I therefore know that I am one with all of its blessed expressions, which includes the presence of a new minister for my beloved spiritual community. Because I know that the highest purpose of my new minister is to express spirit, I therefore know that my new minister is a revelation of spirit as principle. I further know that my new minister is the fulfillment of that which has been promised by God, for it is written, principle is not bound by precedent. It operates according to law, and it is always available to those who are willing to align themselves with it. As I stand in agreement with my beloved community, I see my new minister before me as inspiring spiritual oneness through wisdom, love, and authenticity. I now intend to experience my new minister in full cooperation and agreement with my community, knowing this truth about myself. For I am inspired to live as love in the expression of principle. I am awakening the wisdom within me by clearly communicating the principles of universal truth. I am a conduit of divine love, wisdom, and healing energy, recognizing the inherent wholeness within all beings. I am offering teachings, classes, and mystical studies grounded in spiritual principles to cultivate inner wisdom, personal transformation, and empowered living. I am extending the love, compassion, and transformative power of spirit into the wider community, fostering connections that heal, uplift, and support individuals in their unique journeys. As I now accept the highest expression of a new minister into my life, I know that they will be revealed in a way that will express spirit and serve the highest and greatest good of all who are touched by their presence. I am grateful God is gracious, and so it is. And now it's time for our conscious giving, which is what it's going to take to bring this new minister into our presence. So you can go to cslmidtown.org/donate. You can set up a ongoing contribution or do a one-time donation there. Or you can click the QR code and it'll take you right to that site. Say with me, if you will, I live in a universe of abundance. As I freely and joyfully give, I join in the divine flow. And all that I share with life returns to me multiplied abundantly. And so it is. We got a couple of announcements. Next week, we are in person, live, with Reverend Dr. John Carn, who's going to be a speaker. there is so much good God to consider, and we're looking forward to that. So it's potluck. You'll see a registration for the, actually there will be an Evite that comes out this week. So if you want, come join us at the Garden Hills Community Center. That's where we'll be. And we invite you all to come there. There's also been an email that's gone out to everybody asking for ideas and thoughts about what you want to create this center for, what ideally you would like to have with that. And so we're going to have a discussion about that as we eat and talk about that. So if you're in town, come join us. If you're online, join us as well for that meeting next week. So we'll broadcast the session. And then thanks, Becky Fox, for being with us. And Sundays at 10 a.m., there's a discussion group. The adult discussion group meets. You can join them on the Zoom link from our website. And now let's do our affirmation of life. I leave this place now knowing something better than I knew before. I go forth into the world with a heart full of love and a mind full of good sense. I look at the world in a greater way, knowing that I have within me everything I need to create the life I desire. I give thanks for this understanding, and I am grateful for the spirit of life that lives through me. And so it is. And as Reverend Dr. Ron said earlier, we're going to meet on Zoom after this for a discussion. So if you're not already on Zoom, you can join us there and look for a lively discussion with Ron and Becky and all of us who are there. Thanks, and have a great week.
Hey, I'm so grateful. I'm so grateful. I'm so grateful. I'm so grateful for all that I have. I'm so grateful. I'm so grateful. I'm so grateful for all that I have. Hey, oh yeah, grateful. I just say I am so grateful every day for all I have. Every day, I'm so grateful. I'm so grateful. I'm so grateful for all I have. Every day I say it. Grateful. How I'm grateful. Every day. Oh yeah. I am so grateful. Oh yeah. I'm so grateful. 'Cause I accept and I receive. I am so grateful. Oh yes, I am. I am. So grateful, hey, grateful. I just count my blessings. Grateful. I just count my blessings.
There is a power for good in the universe greater than you are, and you can use it.
New Thought Media Network. We are a global broadcast network of positive music, media, and entertainment, inspiring humanity's evolution along the journey of enlightenment and creating a world of love, peace, empowerment, and prosperity for all. New Thought Media Network. Positively inspiring.